So today, we're diving into our planet's natural resources. We're not just going to talk about what they are, but about our fundamental relationship with them. We're going on a journey, really, from an economy of extraction to a future of regeneration. Let's jump right in.
Seriously, just for a second, look around. The device you're watching this on right now, the chair you might be sitting in, maybe even the coffee in your mug. If you trace any of it back to where it started, you always end up in the same place. Nature. Today, we're going to unpack that exact connection.
So, how does something in the natural world, like a tree or a big deposit of iron ore, how does that actually become what we call a resource? It's actually a bit more complicated than you might think.
You see, for anything to be considered a resource, it's got to pass 3 key tests. First off, it has to be technologically accessible. Oil that's miles under the ocean floor isn't really a resource if we have no way to get to it. Second, it has to be economically feasible. It can't cost more to get it than it's actually worth. And third, and this one's important, it has to be culturally acceptable. A sacred forest, for example, is protected by cultural values. It's not just seen as a pile of timber.
Okay, so this brings us to a really critical distinction, one that pretty much shapes our entire economy. And that's the difference between resources that can be replenished and those that are, for all practical purposes, gone once we use them up.
So on one side, you've got your renewables, things like solar, wind, and timber. Nature has this amazing ability to restore them. But, and this is a huge but, that only works if we respect their natural cycles. If you harvest a forest faster than it can regrow, well, it's not so renewable anymore, is it? Then on the other side, you have the non-renewables, like coal and petroleum. These things took millions of years to form. We're just burning through them in what's basically the blink of an eye in geological time.
This quote just nails the core idea of how nature works. Think about it. When a tree falls in a forest, it's not waste at all. It decomposes, it enriches the soil, it becomes food for fungi and insects, and all of that ultimately provides the nutrients for new life to grow. It's a perfect regenerative loop. No waste. So what happens when we get a little too comfortable with the non-renewable stuff? Well, this number, it's a pretty stark reality check. At the rate we're going right now, India's massive coal reserves, they could be gone in just 50 years. That 50-year deadline really highlights how dependent we are. But here's a wild thought. What if having a ton of a resource is actually a bad thing? I know it sounds totally backward, right? But a lot of resource-rich places have discovered this the hard way. Economists even have a name for it. They call it the paradox of plenty, or sometimes the resource curse.
To see how this curse can play out, not just with stuff like oil, but even with a seemingly renewable resource like water, let's take a look at the story of Punjab. This place was the absolute heart of India's Green Revolution. It was this huge success story that made the country self-sufficient in food. But that success came at a cost, a hidden cost that we're only now really starting to understand.
So here's the breakdown of what happened. Farmers started growing new kinds of crops, high yield, but also really thirsty crops like rice and wheat. This shift, which was often encouraged by things like free electricity for water pumps, led to a massive overpumping of groundwater. You combine that with heavy use of chemical fertilizers, and pretty soon, the amount of water being pulled out was way more than what nature could put back in.
And the result? It's just staggering. Today, nearly 80% of Punjab's groundwater is officially classified as overexploited. The very resource that fueled the revolution is now facing its own crisis.
Okay, so that sounds pretty bleak, I know, but the story absolutely does not end there. Faced with these kinds of challenges, we're now turning to solutions that brilliantly blend ancient wisdom with modern innovation, and it's carving out a much more hopeful path forward.
You see, this whole idea of working with nature instead of against it, it's not some new age concept. It is ancient. Take Rik Ayurveda, for example. It's an ancient Indian science of plant life, and it's basically a blueprint for sustainable farming. It's all about holistic soil health using things like crop rotation and natural pest control, the very same principles modern organic farmers are rediscovering today. And believe it or not, that ancient wisdom is making a huge comeback in some really remarkable ways. Back in 2016, the Indian state of Sikkim did something no one else in the world had done. It became a 100% organic state. So how'd they do it? It wasn't magic. It was a clear, deliberate strategy. They swapped out chemical inputs for natural compost. They started planting a variety of crops instead of just one, and they gave the soil time, about 5 years, to heal itself. And the result wasn't just good for the environment, it was good for the economy. On average, farmers' incomes actually grew by 20%. It just proves that being sustainable can also be profitable.
And this big shift in thinking isn't just happening in farming. It's happening with our energy too. India is really becoming a leader in solar. It co-founded the International Solar Alliance to help get technology and money flowing to scale up solar power all over the world. You see these massive projects like the Bodla Solar Park, and they're just these powerful symbols of a move away from finite fuels and toward the limitless power of the sun.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What does all this point to for our future? Well, it points toward a fundamental shift in how we think, a move away from just taking and extracting and toward actively regenerating. There's actually this really powerful idea from the Bhagavad Gita that captures this shift perfectly: Loka Sangraha. At its heart, it's about our ethical duty to act not just for ourselves, but for the well-being of the whole world. And in an age as interconnected as ours, this ancient idea has never been more relevant. And that, right there, brings us full circle. We have to build an economy that doesn't just try to do less harm, but one that actively works to heal and replenish what we've used. An economy that works in harmony with nature's own cycles. So, here we are. We're standing at a crossroads. One path keeps us in the age of extraction. The other leads to a future of regeneration, where we act as true stewards of our planet. The choice, really, is up to us. Thanks for watching.